I used to think that love could survive any room, even one filled with people pretending to care. That night proved me wrong. The ballroom glittered like a dream I didn't belong to. Every laugh sounded rehearsed, every compliment wrapped in calculation. But Daniel looked perfect, confident, magnetic, the kind of man people orbit around. And me? I was the quiet moon they forgot was holding the tide. It was supposed to be a celebration. Daniel's firm had just won a massive case, and his best friend, Vanessa Hart, had graciously offered to host the gala in her family's mansion. Her world was gold. Gold chandeliers, gold gowns, gold smiles. But her eyes? They were sharp, measuring. She kissed me on both cheeks when we arrived, her perfume heavy with something poisonous. "Maya," she said sweetly, "you look adorable." That word, adorable, the polite cousin of insignificant. Daniel laughed softly as if she hadn't just chipped a piece off my dignity. I smiled anyway, because that's what good wives do. Through the evening, I poured wine, adjusted Daniel's tie, and smiled on cue. Every time Vanessa touched his arm or whispered something in his ear, I told myself I was imagining it. I was trained to ignore the obvious, to turn discomfort into grace. But the cracks started showing before dessert. Two women stood near the balcony, whispering behind their glasses. "Did you see Vanessa's necklace?" one said. "Custom emerald, same one Daniel gifted his wife last month." The other laughed. "Oh, sweet irony. Guess originality isn't part of his charm?" The glass in my hand slipped. Crimson wine bled down my silver dress, a perfect stain across satin. People turned. I smiled like it didn't matter. But inside, something twisted. Small. Quiet. Final. Later, when I found Daniel near the bar, Vanessa was beside him. Her fingers lingered too long on his sleeve. She smiled at me, eyes full of performance. "You really should be more careful, Maya. That dress must have cost a fortune." Her tone carried pity. Expensive, deliberate pity. I was about to walk away when Daniel stepped in. "She's right, Maya. You've been off tonight. Maybe just apologize so we can all move on." For a moment, the world blurred. I thought he was joking. He wasn't. Everyone was watching. Vanessa waiting, guests pretending not to listen. I opened my mouth, but the words felt foreign. "I'm sorry if I seemed ungrateful," I said softly. The words hurt more than any slap could. Vanessa tilted her head, satisfied. Daniel smiled, placed his hand on my back, and whispered, "Good girl." That was the moment something inside me fractured. Quietly. Invisibly. But the thing about quiet breaks? They echo the loudest later. When the night finally ended, the laughter still clung to my skin like smoke. We drove home in silence. The city lights passed through the window. Gold, white, like a heartbeat trying to decide if it still wanted to live. I watched Daniel's reflection in the glass. He didn't look angry. He looked inconvenienced. "You embarrassed us both," he said flatly. "You know how important tonight was." Us. He used the word us as if it still meant partnership. I wanted to scream, to ask how defending myself was embarrassing, how watching me bow to humiliation made him feel powerful, but I didn't. I just nodded, because that's what silence does. It buys time to think. When we reached home, he went straight to bed. I stood in the bathroom, still wearing the stained dress. The mirror caught me. Pale skin, red streak, empty eyes. I wiped my lipstick, but the shame stayed. My reflection stared back, trembling, as if asking, "When did you stop being you?" I whispered, "When he taught me to be small." The clock ticked. The house felt too big for just two people, especially when one had already left emotionally. I took off my wedding ring, placed it on the counter, and stared at it under the light. So small, so meaningless now. Somewhere behind me, Daniel mumbled in his sleep. Content, unbothered. I wondered if he even remembered forcing me to apologize. Maybe for him, it was just another night where he looked good in a crowd. But for me, it was the night the illusion of love shattered. The night I realized silence was no longer strength. It was surrender. And I wasn't going to surrender anymore. He didn't defend me. He performed my apology for her. I went back to the mirror, touched the faint mark where I'd wiped the wine, and whispered, "That was the last time I bowed for anyone." Because sometimes the most dangerous woman in the room isn't the loud one. It's the quiet one, the one who finally decides she's done pretending. That night, I stopped defending love and started remembering dignity. He thought it was over. He thought I'd stay silent, obedient, polished. But silence has its own kind of noise, and mine was about to echo loud enough to destroy everything he'd built. He made me apologize for a lie, but the truth was already planning its revenge. After that night, silence became my companion, heavy, cold, but strangely instructive. Daniel left early the next morning, smelling of cologne and victory, like a man who believed humiliation had restored his balance. He kissed my forehead. "Let's just move on, Maya," he said, like peace was a choice I hadn't already made 1,000 times. Then the door closed and the house became an echo chamber. I stood there barefoot on the marble, his words still hanging in the air. Move on. The same phrase abusers use when they mean forget. But I didn't forget. I started remembering. Every late night, every business call, every smile Vanessa gave that wasn't meant for friendship. When grief has nowhere to go, it turns into focus. That evening, I sat before my laptop, the blue light painting my face in quiet determination. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, only that I'd find it. I opened my inbox to delete old memories, pictures, messages, digital ghosts. That's when I saw it. An email thread I didn't remember copying. Subject line, portfolio adjustments. At first it looked harmless, numbers, figures, banking terms. But halfway through the thread I froze. Vanessa's name appeared. Her initials hidden among investment transfers. D&E Holding, 45K, Private Asset Recovery, under ME Industries. My initials, my business name. Money had moved. Through me. I scrolled faster, heart racing. There it was again. Another transfer, months ago. Vanessa's trust fund rerouted through an account I once signed for during Daniel's merger project. It wasn't just betrayal, it was corruption. My hands shook. I closed the laptop, stood up, and paced the broom. The world didn't feel real anymore. It wasn't just that he cheated, he'd used me. My name, my business, my silence. Love had excuses. Numbers never did. The next morning, I called our accountant's office pretending to confirm a tax form. The receptionist transferred me, but instead of Daniel's assistant, a voice I didn't recognize picked up. "Maya, oh, hi. Vanessa's private investment paperwork just went through under Daniel's authorization. Should I send you the confirmation too?" My throat closed. "What investment?" I asked. A pause. Then panic. "Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought..." "Never mind." The line went dead. For a moment, the room tilted. There it was, the whisper behind the curtain. Not just infidelity, collusion. He didn't just break my heart, he built his empire on it. I sat down again, reopened the laptop. This time, I didn't delete. I downloaded. Everything. Invoices, statements, contracts, every file with Daniel's digital fingerprint. I started noticing patterns, numbers repeating like a code, transfers scheduled the day after major events, charity galas, fundraisers, birthdays. Each one masked as a client donation to my small PR company, except I'd never received a cent. He'd used my name to launder money for Vanessa's investments. That's why he'd made me apologize that night to silence the one person who could ruin his reputation with a single truth. The betrayal wasn't romantic, it was architectural. Every sweet gesture, every compliment had been scaffolding for his lies. He made me his alibi, dressed as a wife. I spent hours tracing every trail. My background in event finances, all those years balancing invoices, reconciling budgets, suddenly became my weapon. Grief faded. Focus took its place. By 3 a.m., the blue glow from the screen made my reflection look almost unrecognizable, sharper, colder, alive. I could see now what I hadn't before. Daniel never married me for love. He married me for access, and I'd been too loyal to notice. That night, I opened a new folder on my desktop, titled Reclaim. Inside it, I began saving everything: PDFs, screenshots, voice notes, every piece of digital truth that could someday burn his carefully built empire to the ground. I renamed subfolders like poetry, apologies, screenshots of every text where he made me beg, transactions, his real language, heart, Vanessa's coded messages. The same data he used to control me would one day define him. By the fifth night, the house no longer felt haunted. It felt strategic. I started documenting timestamps, building timelines. Vanessa's voice echoed from old voicemails. "Tell Daniel I signed off on the wire. Hope the numbers work." I smiled bitterly. They did, but not for long. Then something unexpected happened. A message appeared from an old contact, Eli Turner, one of Daniel's former associates. He'd been quietly blacklisted years ago for questioning company finances. His message was short. "I heard about the gala. Don't delete anything. You'll need it." We met the next evening in a small cafe near the river, far from Daniel's circles. Eli looked older, weary, but honest. He said, "I should have warned you. Daniel's been moving Vanessa's money through side channels for years. You were his front." The perfect clean name. I stared at the table, the weight of it settling. "Why tell me now?" He sighed. "Because Vanessa is cutting him off, and when she does, he'll blame you." He used me to build his walls, but I was already learning how to take them apart. That night, I sat by the window, city lights glittering below. There was grief, yes, but it was different now. No longer the helpless ache of a broken heart. This was sharper, focused grief with direction. I began drafting a letter to myself, something to read later when doubt crept back in. "You will not collapse again. He stole your trust, your name, your worth, but he cannot steal what he doesn't understand: your patience. And patience is the currency of revenge." For days, I lived a double life. During daylight, I smiled through charity calls and vendor meetings. At night, I became something else: a silent architect mapping her enemy's foundation. Daniel grew distant, busy with damage control. Vanessa stopped attending public events. The elite circle began whispering, not about affairs, but about audits. The air was shifting. One evening, Daniel came home unexpectedly. I minimized the files just in time. He looked exhausted, irritated. "You've been quiet lately," I replied softly. "Learning what?" How power works?" He didn't understand. He never did. He thought silence was surrender. He never realized it was strategy. When he went upstairs, I reopened my folder. The evidence was growing like a storm cloud, and soon it would break. I added one last file that night. A voice memo. My own. "If you're hearing this, Maya, remember what he made you do. Apologize for breathing too loudly, for existing too boldly. Now it's his turn to answer." The next morning, I printed a single document, the summary of every hidden account, and placed it inside my old event planning binder. It was poetic, really. The same binder Daniel had called trivial. As I zipped it shut, I whispered, "He made me beg forgiveness, but he'll soon pay for permission." Because sometimes revenge doesn't come with a gun or a scream. Sometimes it starts quietly, with a woman opening her own file.
He made me beg forgiveness, but he'll soon pay for permission.
Elliot Kane. I met Elliot again in the same coffee shop where Daniel once planned his mergers. Ironic, really, how all beginnings taste like endings in disguise. He looked the same, sharp, steady, with eyes that could read motives the way I read numbers. "I heard what happened," he said quietly. "You don't deserve that kind of story." I smiled faintly. "Then help me rewrite it." He leaned in, curious. "What do you want?" "Proof," I said. "The kind that doesn't just destroy. The kind that documents." Within days, Elliot and I began piecing together the offshore web Daniel had spun between Vanessa's shell companies and my business. He traced digital transfers hidden beneath charity fronts, event funds, and silent partners. Every thread led to one truth. Vanessa had been laundering money, and Daniel was her willing partner. It wasn't about love. It was about power. And I was the perfect camouflage, the wife no one questioned. He made me invisible, so I learned how to disappear in plain sight. Smile for the wolves. The invitation came just as planned, Vanessa's elite brunch for philanthropy, the same kind of realm where reputations were made and women like me were trained to stay quiet. I wore silver, the color of armor disguised as grace. Vanessa hugged me, perfume sweet and poisonous. "Maya, darling, I'm so glad you came. You look recovered." I smiled. Healing suits me. Inside, my phone was already recording. Every word she spoke, every dig disguised as charm, all of it became evidence. Elliot had advised me to let her speak. He was right, because people like Vanessa always talk too much when they believe they've already won. She laughed about Daniel's little firm, joked that I never quite understood the level he's playing at. I raised my glass. I said softly, "No, but I'm learning fast." Sometimes revenge begins with another smile. Operation Glasshouse. By the time I met Elliot again, we had enough material to start a quiet storm. Emails, recordings, transaction trails, the kind of truth no one could argue with. We called it Operation Glasshouse because that's what Daniel and Vanessa had built, a world of perfection made entirely of transparency they thought no one could see through. Our plan was elegant, poetic even. At Vanessa's upcoming charity auction, the one she hosted every year for ethical entrepreneurship, Elliot would leak the files in real time. Each bid displayed on the large screen would, instead, project snippets of evidence, signed contracts, bank statements, voice recordings. Same event type, same crowd, same cameras. But this time, my silence would be the weapon. As we mapped every detail, I realized revenge doesn't always feel vengeful. Sometimes it feels like clarity, like restoring the symmetry of a story gone wrong. They built a glass empire, I just turned on the lights. He knows. It happened sooner than expected. Daniel came home early one night, his expression too calm, the kind of calm that comes before destruction. He dropped his phone on the counter and said, "You've been busy." I didn't flinch. "Work keeps me focused." He stepped closer. "You think I don't know you've been meeting Elliot Kane, that washed-up journalist." I met his eyes. "You think I don't know who funds your offshore accounts?" For a heartbeat, the world went still. Then he laughed, cold, measured, the sound of arrogance cracking. "You're not smart enough to cross me, Maya." I took a step forward, matching his calm. "Then you won't see me coming." He turned to leave, smirking. "You're playing a dangerous game." I whispered, just loud enough for him to hear, "No, I'm just following the rules you wrote." When the door shut, I looked at my reflection in the glass window. For the first time, it didn't look fractured. It looked ready. He made me play the fool, but I wrote the final act.
1. The charity auction. Same stage. It had been exactly 1 year since the night I was told to apologize for breathing. The city had changed, or maybe I had. Vanessa's annual charity gala for ethical entrepreneurship was once again the highlight of the season, and this time her guest list didn't include me. But I went anyway. No designer gown, no diamond earrings, just a simple black dress, clean lines, quiet confidence, and the kind of grace that didn't ask for permission. The lobby shimmered with chandeliers and expensive laughter. Familiar faces turned, whispering. I could feel the curiosity, the kind that masks fear. Vanessa saw me first. Her smile tightened like silk being pulled too far. "Maya, I didn't expect you here." "I know, you never do." Before she could respond, Daniel appeared beside her. His hand rested on her waist. That touch, the same one that used to mean belonging, now looked like ownership. He didn't greet me, just scanned me like I was a risk assessment. I smiled faintly. "Relax, I'm just here to watch." He laughed softly, still dramatic. I learned from the best. He thought I came to remember the past, but I came to rewrite it. 2. The reveal. Screens don't lie. Dinner ended, the lights dimmed. Daniel walked onto the stage, confidence radiating under the spotlight. His speech began, a familiar performance. Gratitude, charity, success. Every word crafted to sound humble and heroic. But the moment his voice echoed through the hall, I felt the vibration in my pocket. One single message from Elliot. "It's live." Behind Daniel, the massive LED screen flickered. For a heartbeat, confusion rippled through the crowd. Then silence. The first image appeared. A spreadsheet. Names, accounts, numbers. Then another. Voice recordings. Daniel's voice. Vanessa's laughter. Transfer it through her account. She won't notice. She's too busy pretending to belong. Gasps. Whispers. Phones lifted. Daniel turned, pale under the golden light. "What is this?" He glanced at Vanessa, who shook her head violently. "Stop it! Turn it off!" But the stream was automated, timed, encrypted, unstoppable. Each slide peeled away the facade they'd built, layer by layer, until there was nothing left but truth. He looked out at the crowd, lawyers, clients, investors, faces shifting from admiration to disgust. Someone shouted, "Is this real?" And someone else answered, "Every word." He wanted me silent in front of his world. I let the truth speak instead. 3. The collapse. The perfect life shatters. The noise grew, reporters whispering into phones, flashbulbs igniting like fireworks. Daniel stepped off the stage, trying to command control. "This is manipulation. This is fake." But even as he spoke, his signature appeared on screen. Transfer approvals, offshore routes, receipts linked to Vanessa's foundation. And then, the final nail. A recording of Vanessa's voice. Don't worry, she's too naive to ever notice. That's what makes her useful. The crowd gasped, the kind of sound that breaks people before the truth even lands. Vanessa froze, trembling, mascara bleeding into diamonds. Daniel turned on her. "You told me this was clean!" She snapped back. "You said she'd never find out!" They were both right, once upon a time. I watched from the side, still and steady. This wasn't revenge anymore. This was release. Security began moving in. Cameras flashed brighter. The same world that had clapped for their glamour now documented their fall. The empire they built on arrogance collapsed under its own applause. I turned to leave. The marble floors gleamed beneath my steps, the same hallway from a year ago where I had stood trembling after apologizing for being humiliated. Now I walked alone, but not broken. Every reflection I passed shimmered with something new. Stillness. Daniel called out once, "Maya, wait!" I paused, not out of sentiment but closure. He stood there, disheveled, desperate. "You ruined me." I looked at him, the man who wants to find my worth. "No," I said quietly. "You did that when you confused silence for obedience." He had no answer. Vanessa turned away, shielding her face from cameras. The irony was almost poetic. The woman who lived for attention, now begging not to be seen. As I stepped outside, the night air hit cold and clean. Elliot stood across the street, phone still in hand, watching the chaos unfold. Our eyes met. He didn't smile, neither did I. Because victory didn't feel like fireworks. It felt like balance. The same room that silenced me now echoed my name, not in shame, but in truth. The morning after the storm was too quiet. The city looked cleaner than it had any right to. Maybe it was the rain, or maybe justice has a way of washing things that pain can't. I didn't check the news. Didn't need to. The story was everywhere. Legal power couple exposed in financial fraud. Charity queen's empire crumbled overnight. It was almost poetic. The world that once worshipped them now used their names as hashtags for scandal. And yet, all I felt was calm. Because peace doesn't come when the world claps for your victory. It comes when your soul finally stops trembling. I made coffee. Black and still. The taste was unfamiliar, but strong. Like me. For the first time in years, the silence in my apartment didn't feel empty. It felt earned. I opened my laptop, the same screen that had once shown me Betrayal, and began typing a new document. Title: The Luna Foundation. It wasn't a revenge project. It was a rebirth plan. I wanted to build something that lasted longer than pain. Something that would help women who, like me, had once been convinced that silence was survival. He built his empire on deceit. I built mine on recovery. Weeks turned into months. Court hearings came and went. Vanessa and Daniel both faced indictments, settlements, apologies that made headlines. But none of that interested me, because while they were trying to save their reputation, I was busy building something real. The Luna Foundation started small. A single-room office, 2 volunteers, and an idea that money wasn't the only thing women lost in betrayal. They lost confidence, dignity, and direction. And we were going to help them find it again. My first donation came from a woman I had never met. Her message said, "You don't know me, but your story saved mine." I sat in my chair for a long time, staring at that sentence, because maybe that was the point all along. Not revenge, not fame, but reflection. Pain doesn't disappear when it's avenged. It disappears when it becomes purpose. I thought revenge would make me feel alive, but purpose did. One afternoon, I received a letter. No return address, just my name, in handwriting I'd recognize anywhere. Daniel. I didn't open it right away. It sat on my desk for 3 days, like a ghost that didn't know whether it was welcome. When I finally did, it was short. A single paragraph. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know I finally understand what I took from you. It wasn't money. It was peace." There was a check inside. The amount? $70,000. The irony made me laugh softly. The same number that had once broken me now sat folded between my fingers, no longer a symbol of theft, but of closure. I deposited it directly into the Luna Foundation's relief fund, and on the bank receipt I wrote 3 words in the notes section. Debt to purpose. He once stole $70,000 to buy silence. I used it to buy freedom. That evening, as I left the office, I noticed a soft amber glow from the streetlights, a reminder of that night at the gala, the one that changed everything. But this time, I didn't flinch at the memory. I smiled, because I realized something. Forgiveness isn't letting go of anger. It's letting go of importance, the need to prove, to punish, to balance. Vanessa and Daniel would live with their truth, and I would live with mine. And my truth had turned into legacy. Forgiveness isn't surrender. It's proof you've already won. Months later, I was invited to speak at a business ethics conference. It wasn't lost on me how ironic that was. A year ago, I was forced to apologize in front of hundreds for something I didn't do. Now I was invited to speak in front of thousands, not for what I'd lost, but for what I'd built. I wore white, not the kind of white that begged to be noticed, but the kind that simply didn't need to hide stains anymore. The applause faded as I stepped to the podium. For a moment, I looked out over the crowd, the same kind of people who had once turned humiliation into entertainment. But I wasn't nervous, because when you've been broken in public, you stop fearing eyes. I began simply. There was a time when I thought forgiveness was weakness, when I believed that silence was survival, and that power belonged to those who controlled the narrative. But now I know power belongs to those who no longer need to explain. The audience was silent, listening not just to my words, but to the truth beneath them. And I realized this was what victory sounded like. Not loud, not vengeful, just honest. She took my voice once. Now the world listens when I speak. Later that evening, as I returned to my office, I found a visitor waiting. Vanessa. She looked smaller, not physically, but spiritually. Her designer perfection was gone, replaced by something almost human. She said, "I thought you wouldn't see me." I almost didn't. She nodded. She came to say, "I'm sorry. Not for him. For me. I was cruel to you. You didn't deserve that." There was a silence. Heavy, but clean. I didn't need to rehearse forgiveness. It had already happened somewhere deep inside me. "I know," I said. But maybe you needed to lose everything to find what mattered. Her eyes welled up. Do you really forgive me? I smiled faintly. I forgave you the day I stopped needing to. She left quietly, and I watched her go, not as an enemy, but as a lesson. I didn't win when they lost. I won when I no longer cared who did. The next morning, sunlight flooded my office. It touched everything: the desk, the framed letter from Daniel, the plaque on the wall that read, Luna Foundation, Reclaim, Rebuild, Rise. Beside it hung a small glass frame. Inside, the folded check for $70,000. I'd never cashed it. The bank donation came from my own account, because some symbols are worth more untouched. I wanted to remember what betrayal looked like, not to relive it, but to respect the distance between who I was and who I became. As I stood before the mirror one last time, I saw no cracks, just light. And I whispered, not for the world, but for the woman I used to be. He made me apologize for a lie, but my truth shattered her perfect life. The reflection smiled back, unbroken, unashamed, and finally free. He made me apologize for a lie, but my truth shattered her perfect life. The reflection smiled back, unbroken, unashamed, and finally free.